Do
Blog Talk Radio.
on air.
Welcome to Rage Against the Regime at Blog Talk Radio. To call in, dial 929-477-3565. That's 929-477-3565. I was born in the land of the free, in the home of the brave. I'll bleed American blood until the end of my days. The red, white, and blue, these colors never fade. Rage against the regime.
Well, it's Tuesday night. It's 7 o'clock, and I'm James again. I'm James 24/7, 365, but that's beside the point. Well, we've had a very, very exciting week. There's been a lot of stuff going on. Europe's about to pop a cork. I was just reading an article that the Muslims want to cancel Oktoberfest. They're offended by it. Offended. What are you going to Germany for? You know what Germany is. You know what Germany does. You know what their culture is, and you're going to take their hospitality. They're taking you in out of the cold, the wet. They're feeding you. They're housing you. And you're going to turn around and tell them that that the major event for that city is going to be canceled because it offends you? Really? It offends you? Well, that's fine. You can be offended all you want. But they're not going to change their lives just for you. Why would they? Why should they? You ought to be grateful that they're feeding and housing you. You know? I mean, what's up with that? They're calling it refugees. I've heard that somewhere before, and I think it was right here in Texas on our southern borders. We had, quote, refugees coming across by the thousands. What were they refugees from? They weren't refugees. They're an invasion force, and they on top of being an invasion force, they expect you to pay for their food, their health care, their kids, while they come and invade and try to change your way of life to something we all find reprehensible. I mean, I'm not down with a religion that says it's all right to go and, go goat humping and that pedophilia is fine. Seems to be okay with the liberals, though. What do you think about that? This is Rage Against the Regime. I'm James. You can call in at 929-477-3565. Let me know what you think. And until you call in, I'm going to let you know what I think. I think it's a load of crap. I think the Muslims ought to be sent right back to Syria where they came from. And there again, there's probably a lot of them that don't want to go back, that don't want to be, tied up into that whole Muslim thing. Some of them are looking at this as an escape, and as soon as they get away from the rest of the Muslims, they're converting to Christianity. I've seen that happening. I've seen testimony of that happening on the Christian channels and that. I've listened to Muslim converts that they couldn't wait to get away from it. There's a good guy here by the name of Saad Koza, I think in Mississippi, and he's more than glad that he's here. He wants to be an American 100%. He's been in the country for 20-something years. And, he knows what it is. He came from there. He came out of it. and he doesn't want to go back to it. He's proud to be a Christian. He's proud to be an American. He embraces the American way and everything that America stands for. That's what our immigration is for. You know, we have a way of life. We've got a system that we like, that we enjoy, and it happens to be based on Christianity. So if you want to stay Muslim, America ain't the place for you. You know, you've got the rest of the world to go to that's already Muslim. Why do you want to come to some place that's not? And that all I hear from Iran and the Ayatollahs and that is death to America. You know, screw that. You stay over there where you're at. You come over here, you want to act right, be an American, no problem. But right here in Tyler, Texas, this last weekend, a Muslim goes into a Christian church, and he's wearing fatigues. He's got a vest and stuff on, you know, a combat vest and that. And he goes in there and he starts talking to the pastor, and the pastor sees what he is, sees what he's doing, and that he knew that if he made one wrong step, that his life and the life of everybody that was in that church at that time in Tyler, Texas, would be forfeit. That this guy would just kill him. God put his hand out and stilled that Muslim's heart. And they lived through it. The man was struggling with his faith and struggling with what his faith demands him to do. And he's looking at the people that his faith is demanding him kill, and he sees that they are good people, that they are precious people, that they are worthy people, and he doesn't understand. Why would his God ask him to murder them? And he didn't do it. But he's in jail. You know, praise God, he never got a round off. Not that he didn't have plenty. And that happened right here in Tyler, Texas, yesterday. So if you think that this is just something that's over there and doesn't pertain to you, that you're insulated somehow and it will never touch your life, you better think again, because it's in your neighborhood. It's in your town. You may not know it, you might not have seen it, but it's there. You better wake up and look around. You better get armed, you better get trained, and you better get your head on a swivel, or some Muslim's going to have it on his pike, laughing about you. Well, that's a fact. My name is James. This is Rage Against the Regime. And I just want to say you can call in at 929-477-3565. We'll have Gary Hunt on the air with us tonight. He should be here around 7:30 p.m. tonight. Gary's going to join us. He's out in California where the fires are raging. And he has some great news about Casey Massey in the latest filings in Brownsville, Texas, for our brother Casey down there. Judge Hannon has had a wonderful change of heart, it seems, in asking for some more information. I'll give you the highlights. At the last hearing, Judge Hannon had told Casey's attorney, Cirilla, that the motion to dismiss indictment wasn't written correctly. Judge is telling Casey and Cirilla that his motion wasn't written correctly, that the motion had been denied, in which is discussed in his prior articles, Act 2, Kangaroo Court, how case law subverts the Constitution. And this is, again, you can find this at Gary Hunt's, on Gary Hunt's page. And that in his page is, doggone it. Oh, I love my brain. It goes skits whenever I don't need it. Anyway, Gary's. You can look Gary up at Outpost of Freedom, and that just go www.outpostoffreedom, and you'll get to Gary Hunt's page and his blogs and that, and you'll find Casey and what's going on with him, the prior stuff right there, everything, and from day one. Anyway, back to this. So Judge Hannon tells Cirilla that it wasn't written correctly, and that he was willing to hear a jurisdictional argument. Now, the attorney for the AUSA, Hagan, was not pleased with that decision. He, as a matter of fact, when KC related it to people, that the way that he just kind of turned a little ashen and was real upset that the judge wanted to hear this, and he protested a pretty good bit, but the judge said, "No, I want to hear this," and so Cirilla filed his second motion to dismiss, which incorporates the previous notion to dismiss. So what we're going to talk about tonight is that, and when Gary gets on here, he's a much more succinct about this than I am, and he does a lot of the research in that for his articles, and I can't wait to get him here so we can listen to him. We've got a caller coming in, 530-384. Hang on, let me see if I can get you on. 530-384. Is that you, Gary?
Me? Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. I got you. Well,
I was listening to you tell the story there.
Yeah. I can't wait for you to start because, I mean, I'm telling you, man, from talking to you last night and the way that you present it's so easy for someone like me to understand what's going on. So I'm going to turn it over to you and ask you to fill us in on what the latest filings are for Casey Massey in Brownsville.
Well, as James was saying, that at the hearing about a month ago, when I talked with Casey, that Hannon was visibly upset when Hagan was visibly upset when Judge Hannon said, now I'm not sure, I don't recall the exact wording, but it wasn't written correctly or something like that. And basically he opened the door for Cirilla, Casey's attorney, to refile the motion to dismiss or to amend it or something, and Hagan was visibly upset. But then I asked Casey if Hagan was upset when he walked in the courtroom, because we made sure that he got my previous article just before, a day or two before the hearing, and he said yes, he was upset when he walked in. So Hagan apparently is rattled. You know, he was told back a while back that the people up the river have said, I got to get a conviction on this case, and that came through Cirilla or something to that effect. So there's a high-profile case, and they don't want to lose this, and so they're desperate. This jeopardizes their use of felon in possession of firearms.
Absolutely.
In the broad sense that they've been doing it. And, the way, if you've read all the articles, we've been challenging the verbiage in the law, and that's included within what's happening now. And the motion to dismiss that was denied about a month ago is the one that comes into play in this current situation. So, picking up where James left off, Cirilla filed a second motion to dismiss indictment. Now, if you go to my page, and it is outpost-of-freedom.com/blog, all lowercase letters, and you'll see the article on Casey, and there's links to the motions if you want to read them. Now, Cirilla filed the second motion to dismiss indictment, which incorporated the previous motion. So what he's doing is supplementing the previous one, bringing it into this very short one, 3 pages long, that he filed. And he's dealing with 18 U.S. Code 922G1, which is the felon in possession law that Casey's charged with. And so I'll read you what he said. The 10th Amendment provides that powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states, respectively, or to the people. As this amendment makes clear, and as the Supreme Court has long recognized, the federal government was one of enumerated limited powers. And then he refers to McCulloch v. Maryland, a 1803 case, and then accordingly the federal government may act only where the Constitution so authorizes, and he cites New York versus United States, a 1992 decision. So we're going back to 1803 and then back to 1992 for a more recent interpretation on that. And he says the corollary to this rule is that Congress may not act in areas prohibited to it. As Justice Thomas noted in his concurrence in Prince v. United States, the 1997 decision, the Constitution places whole areas outside of the reach of Congress, and then, such as the First Amendment preventing Congress from prohibiting the free exercise of religion or abridging the freedom of speech. Justice Thomas went on to explain that the Second Amendment similarly appears to contain an express limitation on the government's authority, and stated the court has not had a recent occasion to consider the nature of the substantive right safeguarded by the Second Amendment. Let me interrupt here. Substantive right, there's case law method, and there's substantive right. Substantive right is tied to the Constitution. Most Supreme Court decisions are not tied to the Constitution. They're case law method where they build away from the Constitution, and that the article that I wrote, Kangaroo Court, saying how case law subverts the Constitution, is linked in the article, and that's the one James referred to earlier, and it kind of explains how this case law method, which was developed in the 1870s in Harvard Law School, ignores the Constitution, and they argue outside the Constitution. But substantive is the important thing, because that's where the Constitution is considered in reviewing something. So he said, if, however, the Second Amendment is read to confer a personal right to keep and bear arms, a colorable argument exists that the federal government's regulatory scheme, at least as it pertains to the purely intrastate sale or possession of firearms, runs afoul of the amendment's protections. Now, I said intrastate. He said intrastate. There's interstate, which is the Commerce Clause of the Constitution. There's intrastate, meaning all the commerce was conducted within the state of Texas. And so here comes the rub point. The Commerce Clause gives them authority over interstate, but intrastate is the area we're beginning to question now. If it's totally within Texas, is it within the purview of the federal government to write laws affecting that commerce? Then he goes on, although Prince dealt with a successful challenge to the Brady Act requirement that state law enforcement officers conduct background checks on prospective handgun perpetrators, the logic of Justice Thomas's reasoning is compelling with respect to 922 G1. The 10th Amendment limits federal power. The Second Amendment specifically prohibits the federal government from infringing the individual right to bear arms. Thus, it surely can be constitutional, or cannot be constitutional, for the federal government to prohibit a person's purely intrastate possession of firearms. And then he's asking the court then to dismiss the pending indictment. And now the indictment is the hinge that charges Kevin. If it's dismissed, Kevin walks out of jail same day. Okay, James, what?
Right there, it's I don't have I've got a high school education, a little bit of college, but in my limited knowledge, how can it get any plainer than shall not be infringed, and the federal government can't do it?
We'll drift into that during the course of the discussion tonight on your show here, but
yeah.
There is a question, and I'll tell you now. Cirillo's motion was 3 pages. There was a 4th page, but that's the order, and the judge would check granted or denied and sign it, and it's done. So basically, it's a 3-page motion, of which really all the meat's on 2 pages. And I was talking with Christy on the phone, and she said, "Have you checked Pacer yet?" So while we were talking, I checked Pacer, and hey, the government's response was filed. So I downloaded it, sent it to her, and I started to read it. And well, it's 24 pages, so it's 8 times longer. And
holy crap!
It's linked in there if you want to read it. Now, it's highlighted because when I went through it, I started highlighting things that, there was a difficulty writing this article. But before I get to the difficulty, I started reading it while I was talking to Christy. And something popped into my mind that W.C. Fields said a long time ago. If you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with bullshit.
Absolutely bullshit.
I mean, I just read about, say, 4 or 5 pages, and I realized that this is bullshit. There's no brilliance to it at all. But anyway, I didn't have time to sit down and go through the whole thing right then, but I emailed Christy a copy, and she's mailed it to Casey, and he may have it today or tomorrow. I don't know. I guess tomorrow he'll probably get it. But he and I have talked about it quite a bit since then. But what was also interesting is that Hagen had been handling everything so far. And now when I read this, and then first I'm going to tell the difficulty. When you got 24 pages and you want to try and keep it down to 3 or 4 page article, my article is 7 pages. It's longer than I usually do. I wanted to keep it down to 3 and 4 pages, so I had to go through and pick the really good stuff to talk about. I had to leave a lot of it out because there was so much bullshit in the government's response.
Trying to bury in paperwork.
What?
Trying to bury Cirillo in paperwork. Trying to run all this junk down that doesn't even pertain to it.
Well, I think baffle with bullshit is more appropriate, quite frankly.
I think you're absolutely right.
But don't worry, Cirillo has my argument, and I know or my article, and I know he's busy, so it might help him step through it. But so I it was a kind of a painful thing. I couldn't even start until the next day to sort out what to write, and I wrote it, and I got with the person that I always use to review my articles. I tell her that she's the person that sharpens the stick that I poke in the government side. And in the course of conversation, we decided it wasn't a stick this time. It was a damn blog that we sharpened. But I didn't catch something at that time, and she was tired. So we agreed the next morning, the day the article came out, which was, the 13th. So on the 12th, she was tired, and we were going to go over it one more time in the morning to check everything out. And, so in the morning when we were going over it, I popped open the 24-page response, and I happened to go to the bottom of it, and I realized that, hey, wait, this is written by Corley, not by Hagen. So I had to go back and make changes in here. Here's what I wrote in the article.
Who's Corley?
Well, Hagen has to answer the motion. Who knows? Maybe even his future as a United States attorney is in jeopardy since this is a high-profile case, and Hagen has stated that he has been pressured from above to win the case. It appears that Mr. Hagen was not up to answering Cirillo's motion, so we have a new player, AUSA Jason Corley, the new king, who filed the government's response to Massey's motion. So we got a new attorney in now. Now, I've talked with that person and a few other people about what would have caused this shift in attorneys. Is it Hagen wasn't doing a good enough job, or Hagen was getting frustrated and pulling his hair out, or maybe even quit his job, who knows? Or maybe Corley came along, some young punk lawyer, and said, you can't do it, I can do it, you give it to me and I'll beat the shit out of that motherfucker. Pardon my language. But we have no idea what caused this. Somebody from above said, Hagen, you're not doing good enough, give it to somebody else. I have no idea why Corley's in here. But I got to admit that Corley brings a lot of humor to this thing. But so, let's see, in looking at what Corley wrote, I listed 7 times that he talked about legal theory. And I guess is this a 2-hour show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So I guess
we got 2 hours, bro. I want to go through this in depth. I mean,
Okay.
It's just fascinating. How in the world can they possibly, jack with something so simple?
Well, desperation, I think it's called. When you're backed into a corner, what do? You claw every way you can, trying to get out of the hole that you dug for yourself. So, as I continued reading, I realized the position Corley was taking. He was asserting that if he were the king, he has his interpretation of what something means, and there is absolutely no attempt to balance justice with what he believes. This brought to mind another historical quote, most often expressed shortly after the ousting or abdication of a king who has refused to abide by the Constitution or exercise any semblance of justice. That quote is, "The king can do no wrong." And it cost Charles I his head. Now to reading from the article, now to restrain you from falling asleep or rolling on the floor laughing, I will only address some of the aspects of the government's argument. First, we will talk about legal theory, since that seems to be an important consideration on the government's part. The following, though interspersed throughout the motion, are consolidated simply to demonstrate the concern. And number one, defendant's motion is not ripe for consideration as a factual matter. Defendant has presented merely a legal theory, namely that purely interstate possession of a firearm cannot be infringed by the federal government of the United States. Defendant has not, however, presented any facts whatsoever, let alone sufficient facts, which, if proven, would justify relief.
Yeah.
Number two, defendant now files a motion to dismiss the indictment based solely on proposed legal theory that purely interstate possession of a firearm by a felon or presumably any other individual cannot be regulated or criminalized by the federal government. Three, but this factual issue does not tangentially create a legal dispute on a matter not in controversy, namely an unrelated constitutional theory cloaked as a suppression issue. Number four, Article 3 of the Constitution, the United States Constitution grants the court authority to adjudicate cases or controversies not irrelevant and tangential legal theory. Defendant does not have standing to challenge any supposed government regulation or criminalization of purely interstate possession of a firearm.
Whoa, wait a minute. Wait right there.
He's charged with a crime, but he has no right to challenge it. The law that he's being charged with. Did you get that?
Yeah. No, I don't get that. I don't see how he cannot challenge it. I mean, it doesn't pertain to him, so why can't he challenge that? It doesn't pertain to it. It doesn't have anything to do with him.
Well, let me ask you.
The law states one thing, and they're trying to convict him on he wasn't committing commerce. He wasn't in the process of commerce. He was stopping illegals down on the border and sending them back across the friggin' river.
James, let me ask you, is that brilliance or bullshit then?
Dude, that's bullshit.
That's bullshit.
Hey, hang on a second. I got to go get my waist waders on, man. This shit is getting deep.
Well, let's see. I'm going to go on number 5. Because defendant's second motion to dismiss proposes an irrelevant and tangentially reached legal theory, and because defendant does not have standing to challenge that issue, the government respectfully requests that the court deny the motion to dismiss the indictment. 6, because both legal theory and binding case law are contrary to defendant's propositions, the government respectfully requests that the defendant's second motion to dismiss be denied. 7, the legal theory postulated by the defendant is just that, a legal theory. Other legal theory supports the proposition that the federal government, through an act of Congress, may indeed have the authority to criminalize purely interstate possession of a firearm by a felon should Congress make the requisite finding that it is necessary and proper to criminalize possession of a firearm by a felon to promote the general welfare of the American people, ensure domestic tranquility, and establish justice. So those are the 7 attacks on legal theory.
I didn't know the Constitution and our amendments were theory. They're fact.
Well, I don't either. I mean, you could call it legal theory, but there's, Cerullo's provided a foundation that takes it out of the realm of theory, and the whole idea in a court case is the case law method, for example, is to say, well, this case says this, and that case says that. You could call it theory until the judge rules on it, I suppose.
Yeah.
But, in concept, it's not legal theory. It's being presented, but he's, playing ad hominem and saying, well, that's legal theory. That's no good. I'm right and you're wrong. This is where the king can do no wrong comes into play, because the way he's asserting this, he says, screw you. I know what I'm talking about and you don't. Yours is theory. Mine is not theory. But wait, we're going to get into his theory in a few minutes. But then in substantive law, the one that was intended by the framers, and the reason for the Article 3 courts, both the Supreme Court and the subordinate courts, is to further define a statute based on its verbiage to see what was intended when the statute was enacted. So
what they meant when they wrote it.
What?
What they meant when they wrote it.
What they meant when they wrote it. And, there's a history, and, I've got to write the article sometime, but I want to go through the history of felon in possession from 1934 forward, but
okay.
I just got too many things that I'm going on right now, but I'm going to go back to 1934. They admitted in Congress, in the congressional record, that they were affecting a social situation, possession of firearms by gangsters, by using the Commerce Clause. However, the only tool they had in the Commerce Clause is to tax weapons when they cross state lines. And, for instance, an excise tax on the firearm, which a pistol back then cost $5, and they wanted a $5 excise tax on the manufacturer, which would raise the price of the firearm to $10. The other tax, and that was not commercial, that was an excise tax for manufacturer, but they also wanted a commercial clause tax on a firearm when it crossed state lines. And so in this discussion, the guy from NRA
a state
said,
line or all state? Every time it crossed a state line, they wanted another one?
Yeah, the guy from NRA says, so if I'm in New York and I want to go hunting in New Jersey and I take my gun, I got to pay $5. When I come back to New York, I got to pay $5. And then they said, well, maybe we need to, look at this a little more closely. But basically what they were saying then is when it crosses state lines or when it's manufactured, we have a right to tax it. That's the limit. Not to make you a criminal and put you in prison for it. So from 1934 to now, in that, 81 years, they've, hey, to hell with the tax. We don't want the tax. We want to slam you in jail.
Well, they're making more money off that than they would the tax.
What, making money off putting them in jail? No, it costs the government.
Yeah.
They got to pay these contract prisons to put these guys up, I don't know how much a day it is.
Oh, that's a pretty good bit according to KC.
I'm sure it is. I'd say, at least $80 or $100 a day is probably what they have to pay the contract prisons. And Willacy, where he was before, is one of those contract prisons, I think. But that's what's happened to the law is it keeps getting worser and worser.
Yeah.
But then, anyway, I go through each of those 7 propositions, the legal theories that he talked about. So the first, in 1 and 2, he suggested as a legal theory, the purely interstate possession of a firearm cannot be infringed by the federal government. Well, the Second Amendment, notwithstanding, the Commercial Clause is based foreign nations and among the several states and with Indian tribes. and the government has yet to directly control intrastate commerce under the provision. So they've never brought the word intrastate in. But he's saying that we can't bring that in. But if the law doesn't say intrastate, does it mean intrastate or just interstate? I mean, that's the point. There's little doubt the government has tried, by twisted abuse of our language, tried to extend their authority to any firearm that had been in interstate commerce or intrastate or interstate commerce. Though, as we will discuss, they change the language when it suits their purpose. So in 3 and 4, he suggested it's an unrelated constitutional theory. In the same document, he cites the Constitution as the authority, as he sees it, as absolute, as if spoken by the king himself. So there is no theory allowed on the public side, since only the government can cite their interpretation of the Constitution as legitimate. This kind of makes you wonder why they even use a pretext of justice when they simply want to imprison somebody.
Yeah.
Now, in the 4th and 5th ones, he suggested it is irrelevant that Massey challenged the indictment because he has no standing, presumably, to defend himself. Once again, the king has spoken.
Well, now, wouldn't Massey have standing being a citizen of Texas? I mean, he's an American citizen. That gives him standing, doesn't it?
This, you know, it's unfortunate the state of Texas won't defend their citizens, but this is a federal issue, and the fact that he's a state citizen is Texas won't intercede in this, but that's what Kevin's saying. This was intrastate. You have no interest in it. He's fighting the battle for the state of Texas and the whole damn country, for that matter.
Absolutely, and people, they don't understand how relevant and how pertinent this case is to gun rights, to the Second Amendment, and to states' rights. I haven't seen anything on it at all on TV about how important this is, and this is going to be a really, really huge judgment.
If we win this, and I expect that we will, right now I honestly believe that Hannon, after reading this, if he doesn't fall on the floor laughing, will rule to dismiss the indictment.
Oh, absolutely.
I sure hope so, but the ramifications are great.
Too. Yes, they are.
Anyway, when we get to number 6 and 7, he tends to give credence to the legal theory by stating that theory and case law are contrary to Massey's proposition. However, we must understand that the government proposed another legal theory. This is their legal theory. And this is what he wrote in the response. Were Congress to make this is funny. I mean, you know, grab your seats, don't drink any milk or anything because you'll get it all over the table or the keyboard or something. Were Congress to make the proper findings, and act in the interest of, quote-unquote, general welfare. Remember, that's a provision in the preamble of the Constitution and addressed at least one other time in the Constitution. The general welfare of the people of the United States, it is theoretically possible Congress could, and theoretically possible Congress does, have the constitutional power to regulate and criminalize all possession of firearms by felons. I'm going to stop right here. That's what he's claiming right now, but now he's saying it's theoretical that Congress could outlaw felon in possession by all felons. So he's almost admitted that the Commerce Clause doesn't cut it.
He just did admit it.
He did. Now, let me continue with that. Congress, however, has not chosen to act pursuant to alternative powers and has instead relied on the Commerce Clause. Because of this, an interstate nexus relating to possession of firearms is an element of crime, and any challenge the defendant is raising in regard to purely intrastate possession is a factual challenge, not a constitutional one. Now, let's think about this. He says that it's theoretically possible. So if Congress did want to make it absolutely unequivocally clear that any felon in possession of a firearm falls within their jurisdiction and they say you can't own a firearm, wouldn't they write it under the general welfare provision instead of under the Commerce Clause provision? Let's look at why they would have to do that. The commerce provision says that if it's traveled in interstate commerce. So if I live in a state that manufactures firearms, I can own firearms. But if they don't manufacture ammunition, I can only own the firearm. I cannot own the ammunition. However, if I live in a state that manufactures ammunition, I can own the ammunition. But if they don't manufacture the firearm, then I can't own the firearm. If I live
firearm,
in a state,
one specific to that state.
Right. And if I live in a state that manufactures both firearm and ammunition, hey, I can own the firearm and the ammunition. However, if I live in a state, which is most of them, that manufactures neither ammunition or firearms, then I can't own one. So if that's the case, that's reality according to the way they're interpreting the Commerce 922G1 Commerce Clause, that it is broad and overreaching, so it lets some people own a gun and ammunition, some a gun, some an ammunition, most people nothing at all. Now, if we're looking at general welfare, unless Congress had the wisdom to know that those states that manufacture both firearms and guns have felons that are good guys, but those states that manufacture neither have felons that are bad guys, there's no justification in the world for them to not go with the general welfare provision and make it illegal for any felon under general welfare to possess a firearm. But either they didn't have the wisdom to do it, and Corley's a hell of a lot smarter than them, we know that. I mean, he's probably been an attorney for at least a couple of years. Or that Congress knows that they can't do that.
Shall not be infringed.
General welfare provision. And I'm going with the second one because I don't think Corley's that damn smart.
I believe you're right.
So he has made the case for us with that argument he just presented, pretty much. Hasn't he?
He just shot himself in the shorts.
I would say so, but that's not the first time he shot himself in the shorts. We'll get another one.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm going to keep it short. That's one.
Well, I mean, like I said, don't drink milk while we're doing this show because you might spit it all over the place.
Holy smokes, he done blew his right ball off. Let's see if he goes for the left one.
So on page 6 of the response, Article 1 of the Constitution grants the judicial branch authority to adjudicate cases and controversies in our system of government. Courts have no business deciding legal disputes or expounding on law in the absence of such a case or controversy. Now, case or controversy. Then he cites, to prove his point, this is a criminal matter against Casey, isn't it? Yeah, they're charging him with a crime.
Criminal.
Oh, yeah. So then he cites Already LLC versus Nike Inc. Oh, wait, those are two companies. That is not a criminal thing, is it?
No.
And then he cites Daimler Chrysler Corporation versus Kuno. And Kuno's presumably, I didn't look him up, I didn't see a point, but Kuno's probably an individual that had something against Chrysler, a suit Chrysler against Kuno or Kuno against Chrysler. So he's citing basically civil actions, contract or safety or something like that with these things, or maybe trademark violations by Already and Nike. But those aren't criminal cases like they're charging Casey. So why is he citing these civil cases? But then he says a controversy is a conflict between parties. It's not criminal. A controversy is mooted when there are no longer adverse parties with sufficient legal interest to maintain the litigation. Wait, Casey's still got a problem with the fact that they want to throw him in prison for half the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Accordingly, an actual live controversy must remain at all stages of federal court proceedings, both at trial and the appellate levels. Well, damn, if I was Casey, I'd be fighting to get out of prison too.
No shit.
So, why he put this paragraph in there, I think they have boilerplates, I know, where they can copy and paste. They used to have to retype them, but now they can copy and paste things that are arguments But this argument doesn't even apply to Casey's case situation. So, well,
not in the farthest reach of my imagination. And, dude, I used to do a lot of LSD. I've got one hell of an imagination. This does not even come close to being in the same ballpark.
Well, remember, Cirillo cited McCulloch versus Maryland in his case, remember, when I read Cirillo?
Yeah.
So
right.
He's saying, this is from the response. In the response, let's see, but there are two more rather interesting, or there are more too. We added some. I forgot to change that. There are more interesting points that warrant our attention. Cirillo cited McCulloch v. Maryland with reference to limited powers of government according to the Constitution. Oh, that's that legal theory there. In what appears to be a DOJ boilerplate insert on page 10, he suggests that the limited powers of government have a broad interpretation. And then this is quoting from the response. This government is acknowledged by all to be one of enumerated powers. But there is no phrase in that instrument which, like the Articles of Confederation, excludes incidental or implied powers, and which requires that everything granted shall be expressly and minutely described. Even the 10th Amendment, which was framed for the purpose of quieting excessive jealousies which had been excited, omits the word expressly and declares only that the power is not delegated to the United States nor prohibited to the states, are reserved to the states or to the people, thus leaving the question whether the particular power which may become subject of contest has been delegated to the one government or prohibited to the other, to depend upon a fair construction of the whole instrument. So with respect to the whole penal code of the United States, whence arises the power to punish in cases not prescribed by the Constitution? All admit that the government may legitimately punish any violation of its laws, and yet this is not among the enumerated powers of Congress. So I don't deny that the government can punish people for violation of their laws, but what he said in there, or prohibited to the other, granted to one government or prohibited to the other is the key. But then in Corley's words, that was a quote from the McCulloch case, the 1803 case.
Okay.
Then Corley says, it should come as no surprise that the Supreme Court ruled in McCulloch versus Maryland that Congress had the power to incorporate a bank despite having no specific enumerated power to do so. The precedent set nearly 200 years ago in McCulloch. He says nearly 200 years ago. See, this is why I think it's a boilerplate, because it was actually 1803. It was 212 years ago. But he says nearly, so it's boilerplate. Nearly 200 years ago in McCulloch, Maryland works against the defendant, not for him. So he's saying McCulloch works against him because the bank, they didn't have specific authority to authorize the bank, though they did. Because the Constitution doesn't say the right to open a bank shall not be infringed. He didn't say that, I did.
Right.
And that's the whole point, because the Constitution, in the Second Amendment, it says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So there's the prohibition that he's denying. He's saying the government isn't constrained from creating a bank, but it doesn't say shall not infringe the right of banks. But that he's ignoring the fact that it says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, which is a prohibition on government. There's no other way to describe that. So it's
they're prohibited from it.
So that's what pushes the government into the narrow position of saying, well, we can only do it in under the provisions of the Commerce Clause, because when it crosses state lines we have jurisdiction, but we can't infringe otherwise. So that's the whole argument on our side, is it can't be infringed. It can only apply to commerce. But by him saying that, well, let's see, now he talks about, if not prohibited, and in the case of the matter of McCulloch dealing with the creation of a bank, there is no prohibition against the government so doing. But the legal theory presented, now see, this is his legal theory, and it's really funny. makes clear that there is a prohibition against the government's intervention into the right to keep and bear arms, known as the Second Amendment, and the prohibition therein is called infringement. Nowhere does the Constitution address the government's inability to infringe upon creation of banks. In fact, there's so much said about coin and currency, all implying such powers as necessary with regard to banks. So, see, they have authority in banks because they have control of the value of money and things like that. You can't counterfeit the coin of the realm, all these other things.
So is KC charged with being in possession of a bank?
Well, the enumerated powers give Congress authority in banks by virtue of the coinage and the money and the counterfeiting issues, right?
Right.
But they don't give, nowhere in the Constitution does it give them the right over firearms. The only thing about firearms in the Constitution is the prohibition against infringement.
They are prohibited from infringing on anybody having one.
Right. But he's trying to compare the two. The right to control firearms is the same as the right to control banks. But
where's my scorecard? I got to put another mark down. He just blew his left ball off.
Right.
Holy shit.
It's kind of hard to explain it, but he's saying they didn't enumerate the right to banks, but they got money, currency, counterfeiting, all these things in the Constitution. So that, for them to have a degree of control over them, which is granted by the Constitution, they're going beyond the written word of the Constitution. And that comes in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18, which the Supremacy Clause, where and any other laws necessary in support of the above listed powers. I don't know the exact wording. Let's get it.
Uh-huh. When KC wasn't holding a bank, he was holding the firearm.
Here's the authority for them to take that coin and currency and counterfeiting. To make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into the execution the foregoing powers, and those are some of the foregoing powers, and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or any department or office thereof. So, see, they do have the authority to control banks because that's an extension of the enumerated powers above regarding value of coin, counterfeiting, and all that. But there's nothing that says that they have the right to control firearms. In fact, there's a prohibition against it.
Absolutely.
So, this is, in talking with people, some people have trouble understanding it, but it's so simple. I'm just not very good at expressing it, so I'm kind of repeating myself, hoping that the listening audience will really understand what we just said about McCulloch versus Maryland. This is where the son of a bitch shot himself in the left ball.
Absolutely.
So then let's go on further, though. He talked about the general welfare, but theoretically they could use the general welfare provision, and theoretically they could outlaw felon in possession, but they didn't, so we're stuck with the Commerce Clause. That was the first ball, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah. That was the right
Commerce Clause was the Commerce Clause was his right nut. This one is a left nut.
Okay, let's see if we can get the penis. Just for the hell of it.
Blow his dick off, we'll start calling him Caitlyn Jenner.
Oh, shit. We'll probably have to pay for the surgery, too. So, now, he had talked about now, militia is discussed in the Constitution.
Yeah.
The second, let's see. So my question on that, let me finish what I wrote. Nowhere does the Constitution address the government's inability to infringe upon the creation of banks. In fact, there is much said about coin and currency, all implying such powers as necessary with regard to the banks. So just how does that work against the defendant? I mean, that question I had to get in there. He said it works against the defendant, and I can't figure out how. So, ROFL, I guess. Then the second, let's see, then in his discussion, he's trying to conjoin the militia and the people, as expressed in the Second Amendment. as the only, as it being the body of the people, not militia and people, but both of them as the body of the people. He refers to a guy's article in there that says this. This is he cites a Second Amendment constitutional scholar, which apparently he places the opinion above the written law. So if we consider the separation or the co-joining of militia and people, the two separate and distinct words these idiots, when they wrote the Second Amendment, put in there because they meant one and the same, they just wrote two words because they didn't know what the hell they were doing. If we consider that the framers of the Constitution were far more particular in their choice of words than the AUSA, we can easily dispute the effort to co-join, since they use both militia and people. And Congress surely is more meticulous than the AUSA when they enacted the following. Now, this is from 10 U.S. Code 311. Militia composition and classes. The militia of the United States consists of all able-bodied males at least 17 years of age, and except for as provided in Section 313 of Title 32, under 42 years of age who are or have made a declaration of intention to become citizens of the United States, and of female citizens of the United States who are members of the National Guard. Then it goes on, B, the classes of militia are the organized militia, which consists of the National Guard and the Naval Militia, and 2, the unorganized militia, which consists of the members, that's individuals, isn't members of the militia. So Congress saw that there were members as well as the militia who are not members of the National Guard or the Naval Reserve. So Congress, even in their 10 U.S. Code 311, has recognized that there's the militia as a body as well as the individuals within the militia. And, to me, when I write, I define it this way. The militia, organized, unorganized militia, but coming together in a body, I use an uppercase M. And when I'm talking about the individual, I use a lowercase m, because one is a proper noun. It's these, 7th Street Militia or Hunt County Militia or something like that. But the individual is just a simple noun that you're a member of the militia. I'm not. I'm too old for it, but you are. You're a member of the. You are militia because you're one of the members of the militia.
Yeah. Well, not only that, I'm a citizen of the United States, and I fall under that class. So, yeah.
Right.
All the people of the United States falling under that class are militia.
Yeah, so here we clearly have members, quote-unquote, members of the militia who are clearly individuals like people. However, that doesn't stand as the only element that suggests individuality, because in 10 U.S. Code 312, the next section, we have militia duty exemptions. The following persons are exempt from militia duty: the Vice President, the judicial and executive officers of the United States, the several states, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Virgin Islands, members of the armed forces except members who are not on active duty, custom house clerks, persons employed by the United States in the transmission of mail, workmen employed in armories, arsenals, and naval shipyards of the United States, pilots on navigable waters, mariners in sea service of a citizen of or a merchant in the United States, and a person who claims exemption because of religious belief is exempt from the militia duty in a combatant capacity if the conscientious holding of the belief is established under such regulations as the President may prescribe. However, such person is not exempt from the militia duty that the President determines to be non-combatant. So this 312 is talking about individuals. But he's trying to say that the Second Amendment only applies to this collective called the militia group. So Congress doesn't see eye to eye with Mr. Jason Corley. So I don't know if that gets shoots the dick off or not.
I think it just did. I think we're gonna have to start calling him Caitlin Corley.
Though some of those that I just described are general in nature, without a doubt applied to individuals of certain character. So if the theory of the AUSA is correct, and whether the Congress wanted to use general welfare provision of the Commerce Clause, they would have. If what Corley wants to suggest surely have included a class of people known as felons. So, see, when they excluded those people in the militia, they would have had
excluded felons.
8 in there. They would have had number 9, any convicted
Yes.
felon. So that's not even general welfare. That's exemption from the militia, which would remove them from the prohibition of infringement. But Congress never saw fit to put it as number 9 in the exemptions from the militia. So all the opportunities Congress has had using the General Welfare Clause or even amending the Militia Act, which would have clearly established a broad interpretation of felon in possession, they have all this time, since 1934, kept it narrowly defined relative to the Commerce Clause that deals not with intrastate, but with interstate commerce, or with foreign nations or Indian tribes. So, I wonder what the king will have to say about the obvious and rather discomforting exclusion of films from the most logical source of limitation of the right to bear arms. Is it possible that the king, Congress, can do no wrong and accordingly will not infringe except via the Commerce Clause? And that's the end of the article. Now, I didn't cover everything that I thought laughable in there. Like I said, that was 6.5 pages, and it was rather long, and I try and keep the article shorter. But that's, I mean, that's absurd. I don't know where this guy Corley came from. I don't know if he even, well, he's got to have a law degree because he's got a bar number. But, you know, I think he's some guy that, oh, don't worry, I can handle it. And if it took the load off of Hagen's shoulders and the responsibility for losing the case, then Hagen is probably very grateful that this idiot comes along and says, I'll take it from here, and that takes the responsibility off of Hagen. Well, I hope, I suppose.
I see Corley as Obama and Hagen as Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy Carter is so glad Obama came along because it got him off the hook for being the lousiest son of a bitch president there was. This old boy, he done stepped himself up into being into the Obama situation. He is really screwed up. Damn.
Well, but now, see, I did a radio show Sunday, and we were talking about political prisoners. And in this country, you cannot have a political prisoner. You can't arrest somebody for his political beliefs. But the subjects of that show were Robert Beecher, felon in possession, Casey Massey, felon in possession, William Wolf up in Montana, buying a automatic rifle from a government agent. And we even talked about Kim Davis a little, even though she wasn't convicted and in prison, because what they did to her is definitely in violation of the law as written. But
well, yeah, even according to that state law, I mean, their state law prohibits homosexuality. So
and the Constitution and one statute in the United States Code. You know, if you read my article on it, the Congress has ruled that a man and a woman is the only marriage that's recognized by any government agency or office. So Congress is wrong. But see, who's in that one? Who's the legislative body? Congress or the judicial branch of government? So what happened in this country? You know, I read a lot of old cases. And if something's unconstitutional, well, here's one people are mostly familiar with. Well, I guess about 20 years ago, maybe longer, the Supreme Court ruled that death penalty was unconstitutional unless certain conditions were met. So all the states immediately went back and wrote their death penalty provisions, and some of them have never restored the death penalty within their state, even though the Constitution clearly says capital crime and it's always meant death penalty in it.
Right.
But they immediately went back and rewrote the laws. So when this Obergefell decision was made last April or May of this year, the state legislature in Kentucky and the Congress of the United States should have immediately looked at the laws on their books and said, oh, that's not constitutional anymore, as if it can change, and we've got to rewrite it. But they didn't. And then we have the Kentucky Constitution that talks about marriage, Section 223A. This is the marriages between a man and a woman, as well as the statute, and I don't remember the statute number, a man and a woman. So the federal Constitution and the Kentucky Constitution make one body responsible for legislation. That's making laws. And
right.
It's not the judicial branch. It's not the executive branch. It's the legislative branch. So she's getting punished for the Congress of the United States and the General Assembly, which is the two houses of Kentucky, abrogating their responsibility to update their laws consistent with the Obergefell decision. So she's the scapegoat. This is like the private getting busted because the general screwed up. And that's exactly what happened with Kim Davis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, we're talking about legislation and laws, too, and that's what Casey's case hinges on, and that comes back to general welfare, the Militia Act, or Commerce Clause. And if you're under the Commerce Clause, there's a reason that Congress chose to put it there in 1934 and keep it there, even though they converted it from taxation to criminal penalties. They've never tried to remove it into a general welfare provision. It's always been under and refers to commerce in the 922G1. They did not exempt felons from being part of the militia, except for conscientious objector. Any member of the militia must be able to handle a rifle, because militia means soldier, basically.
Right.
Now, what is a soldier? Are they going to give him a sword or a spear because we can't have a firearm? No, we don't fight that way anymore.
Even the conscientious objectors still had to participate. They just weren't going to be in a combat role. They still had to. Okay, they were going to be clerks. They were going to be hauling material. They were going to be
hospital
making
workers, medics, things like that. Yeah.
But they didn't get away from it.
They could have put one in there that said all felons will have a non-combatant role, and that even would have perhaps been constitutionally acceptable. I don't think so, but at least it would be an effort to substantiate that felons could not own firearms, and in a way, even though that it says infringe, now the non-combatant, the conscientious objector voluntarily removes himself, they would be infringing by removing him, but at best, if they presume the authority, they could have done it there, they could have done it under general welfare, but for 80 years, they've left it in commerce.
Right, and the only thing that they can regulate is while the sale of it. That's commerce.
Not
the
even
sale
the sale.
Of it.
Not even the Class 3 licensing through sale. That's a different issue. But I wrote one of the articles early on. It was Liberty or Laws, felon in possession is not illegal or unlawful. It was not under Camp Lone Star. But I used an analogy of the pedestrian overpass over a highway.
Yeah. Do that. Tell that one again. That is excellent.
What?
Yeah, explain that one again, because there's a lot of people that are listening that haven't heard that, and it's just so spot on and concise that it explains it really well. If you would, please go into that, Gary.
I will. You have a pedestrian walkway over a highway, and it's horizontal and it goes from one side to the other. And at each end, you've got a stairway. And say the left side, as you're looking at it, is the side where it's being shipped, and the right side is where it's being received. The stairway, the overpass, and the stairway down on the other side are commerce. That's interstate commerce. Once I get on the sidewalk, though, I'm out of commerce. Now, think about this. If they can extend out down the sidewalk as many blocks as they want to go on the receiving side, why can't they also extend it all the way down the sidewalk as far as they want to go on the shipping side? And so then they could presume that every firearm either has been shipped through interstate commerce, or will be shipped in interstate commerce. Therefore, we include all of them. Now, that would get rid of the problem of ammunition in one state and ammunition in another, because they could presume that eventually somebody's going to cross state lines with it. So if they can't extend it down on the sidewalk on one side, they surely can't extend it down on the other, and so it's got to be interstate. Interstate would include only the stairways and the overpass. The sidewalks then become intrastate, and that's where they lose it. But they
wasn't that what he was trying to substitute intrastate for interstate?
Yeah, that's what we're putting in.
Right.
We're saying that the federal law does not extend to intrastate. It does not extend to the sidewalk. It only is interstate. It only applies to the stairway up, the stairway down, and the overpass.
Exactly.
Once it leaves that, it's in intrastate. And so now if you've got a Class 3 dealer, he's got to do a background check. But that's to the purchaser from the Class 3 dealer. But once that person buys it from the Class 3 dealer, there's no law, and they recognize this. There's no law that says I can't sell that firearm to somebody.
Right, and that's what they're griping about now, wanting more background checks. They want to keep following that weapon through perpetuity, and
right,
they're not entitled.
Remember, they have not been able to extinguish private sale. They haven't even tried. A lot of people clamor for it, gun shows and all that. But the only one that's subject to performing background checks is the Class 3 licensee.
Because he's the only one they have control over.
Right. And they know that. And that's interstate commerce, because generally he receives that shipped from another state. And there was an interesting case recently, and it had to do with Texas and New York, New Jersey, Washington, somewhere up there. And there's only very limited Class 3 holders in that area, and none of them sell firearms. So they're denied the right to buy a firearm. So they went down to Texas and did the background check there, bought the firearm, had it shipped to the Class 3 licensee up where in D.C. or wherever it was, and went up and received it. They were charged criminally for that, for bypassing the laws, and they said, well, we're denied the right to have a firearm even though we've got Class 3 licensees if we can't buy it in another state and ship it up there. And I think that the court held in their favor. So the court is shifting to being a little more protective of firearms. In this case before us right now, United States versus Massey. Who knows? If I'm hoping he'll walk out of jail on the 30th, and he'll be out here next month eating ice cream with me.
Man, I'm praying for it. I'm praying for it.
If not, Cirillo has agreed that he's going to take it to the appellate court and Supreme Court if necessary. If we do win, though, what becomes rather interesting is the arguments that we use to win. I will provide to Robert Beecher's family and hope that their appellate attorney will look at it and say, go to the appellate court and say, you need to release my client. Yes, he pled guilty to a non-crime. And here's the argument that it's a non-crime.
And how many other people are sitting in the penitentiary right now that it would apply to?
Any that's got a lawyer that'll fight it. Thousands easily.
Oh,
but
yeah.
More importantly, it takes away from the government a tool that they're using to go after patriots, people that believe in the Constitution, which obviously, by what we just read, the U.S. Attorney's Office does not believe in the Constitution. They believe in the power of the king.
He just said it was a theory. He said the Constitution is a theory. He said that our civil rights are a theory.
Until he wanted to express his theory, which was the general welfare theory. All of a sudden, that's real, but that's stretching the imagination to the point that you can't even tell where the ends are.
It's okay. You're talking about a bank, and it's apples and oranges.
McCullough. No, I was talking about the one where the Congress theoretically could enact laws under the general welfare provision, not McCullough. McCullough's the bank one.
Oh, jeez. Right. theoretically enact that.
The article's up on the blog, and it makes an interesting read. If you kind of understand legal matters, and these guys are so far off base, it's pathetic. In fact, let me find a quote in there that I missed when I decided not to read it. Where is that? Okay, this was after we talked about before we got to McCullough versus Maryland, when we were talking about the legal theory of, I mentioned Daimler and Nike, and these were civil actions. Talk about stretching the hell out of an argument. The controversy here is a criminal charge brought by the U.S. government against Massey. It's not a dispute between parties. It is an accusation based upon the misapplication of a statute. It is even conceivable that someone, especially a highly paid public servant attorney, could deny any accused person the right of challenging the misrepresentation, or can the king Corley do no wrong? Now, I expect that you're getting as bored at reading this as I am at having to wade through it. I do have my boots on to find the little gems that, if I were a psychiatrist, demonstrate the insanity or at least the mental instability of the person who prepared the government's response. Surely not even the king would allow him to pass background check on mental grounds to own a firearm. And that's my analysis of Corley. By what he wrote, he should be denied the right to own a firearm because of mental instability in the background check.
Yeah, you got to be crazy to try to put this out there and think it's going to stick.
Well, we'll see what happens.
I see what you're saying. Corley couldn't pass the background check, dude. Because this document he submitted proves he's nuts.
Well, they really haven't gone very far in the mental instability, because that's what that Darren Roof was. Well, that was a failure of the system. They have background checks. They want to increase the requirements for background checks, but Dylan Roof, the guy that shot up the black church in wherever it was, he got the firearm because they didn't return the background check in time.
Yeah,
I don't know if
it
they
went
ever
past
did
the
as
3-day
far as
limit.
that goes.
72 hours.
What?
There's a 72-hour limit. Yeah.
But they didn't do it in time, so he bought the firearm. And I don't know what the time circumstances are in it, but the fact is they can't perform the background checks, because that would have been a test whether mental instability would have kept him from getting a firearm, because he was under treatment. But they could, they can't act, they're drinking coffee, playing solitaire on the government computers, and, Doom and things like that. So they don't have time to do their job, what they're getting paid to do.
Well, Gary, I really appreciate you coming on here and explaining to everybody that's listening what's going on and just how important this case is to militias, to every person in the country. That, if they can do this, and they have twisted the law so bad, and now it's being brought out to light that they didn't even have the authority to do that. It's just incredible how far the government's gone awry.
Well, it's depending on whether Judge Hannon can see the problem here, and hopefully then dismiss the indictment and leave it to the federal government then to appeal his decision to the higher court.
Yeah, with Massey free.
But
he
would
doesn't
be
need to
free
be
if
sitting there while
indictment's dismissed. He would be free, and
yeah.
It needs to get to the appellate court, whether it's brought by Massey or perhaps by Beecher or somebody else who's initially charged. By using this argument, eventually we're going to get the appellate court and get and maybe even the Supreme Court to get a decision. And I'm willing to bet that the appellate court and the Supreme Court would both say the same thing that we are: is damn, commerce stops right at the bottom of both stairways.
Absolutely. Well, it's as plain as the nose on your face, and that's what I don't understand is how they can theorize that Well, if Congress had thought about it and they had wanted to, they could have, but they didn't. So it doesn't matter because they could have, and you're guilty.
Right, and we're looking at 80 years that Congress has had that opportunity.
Well, they've been busy. They've been busy. I mean, look what our Congress has been doing the last 10 years.
Think about it. In the gangster era, they would love to be able to keep felons. Al Capone's people back then prison terms were a lot shorter than now. You could murder somebody and get 5 or 10 years. Now Casey is facing 15 years for possession of a firearm. So the world has changed. But they would love to have been said, if you've been convicted and you're a gangster, you can never have a firearm. But they can't do that.
No, they can't. It's illegal.
All they could do is, bust you for not paying the taxes if you got one illegally if they caught you with it.
And then they'd have to prove you didn't pay the tax.
Right. So, Congress has had this opportunity to satisfy the need that they wanted to satisfy in 1934, but in all that time they haven't opted to take it beyond where it is in the Commerce Clause now, even though the penalties have changed. So surely Congress realizes, unlike Mr. Corley, that there are limitations imposed by the Constitution, and they're not willing to go outside of them. Look at all the pressure that's come from the Brady Act and Brady getting shot and all these instances, and they still have not come back to say this goes beyond commerce.
Absolutely. Well, they tried with Sandy Hook.
What? Yeah.
They tried with Sandy Hook.
Colorado, any of these shootings, yes. Any one of them would be enough to, if they had the authority to do so, any one of them would have been sufficient for them to use the general welfare position, use 10 U.S. Code 311 and especially 312 to exclude felons from participation in the militia. But they haven't. But the King Corley thinks knows that they can, theoretically.
I think we're going to have to change that to Queen Corley. He lost his pecker in both balls, dude. Okay, we'll call him the King.
We won't know if he won't. We won't know until 2 weeks. We won't know.
We won't know until here comes the judge.
Yep, 2 weeks from today.
2 weeks from today. Oh man, 2 weeks from today. I hope my brother is out of that hole.
Well, he's going to come out here and eat ice cream with me, chocolate chip ice cream with me.
You bet. Oh, I saw a picture of her on Facebook yesterday, and bless her heart, she's had a little bit of respite with all this stuff and to see her smile and to have something happy to look forward to again.
Yeah, I like that picture amazing. With her friend smiling. Yes.
Yeah. Bless her heart. Oh my God, has she been put through the ringer?
But that's why a lot of people might have tried to call Christy, and she doesn't take the calls, and she's asked me to deal with anything for her, and I don't mind. I feel sorry for her, but people were bugging her so much that it was getting her down, because every time somebody called, it was reminding her of the circumstance she finds herself in.
Yeah, and there ain't nothing she could do about it. You talk about... oh, my God.
Bearing the responsibility.
She's not that kind of person. She's not the kind of person that doesn't do something about something that's wrong when she sees it. She's an active person. She's actively helping in the community, and that kind. And this is just totally put her in a position that she can't even. Like I said, I'm just glad to see her smile. That was a blessing. That was a real blessing.
We talk frequently, and I think you got involved in this thing with Dinah a while back, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
And that was really bearing on her, and it was kind of hard to keep her head up through that. But finally, she stopped. Realized that I hate to mention ice cream again, but this is probably a good education for the people listening. A long time ago, when I lived in Daytona back in the
Back in the
60s, 70s. A friend of mine was a child psychologist who didn't have any children. Child psychologists are, don't practice what they preach. But he was a good friend, Ron Wiley, a real nice guy, and his wife. They were good friends. We were sitting in a bar one night, having some drinks and talking about children, and he said something that has stuck with me verbatim since he said it. If you want your child to cry, every time he cries, give him ice cream. Now you think about that. If I want ice cream, I got to cry. I'm not that dumb. I want some ice cream. So Dinah was looking for ice cream. She was looking for responses. She was trying to provoke people. She went from $50,000, $100,000, $250,000 damages, kept escalating thing, trying to piss Christy off. And I had to talk Christy out of giving her ice cream because what she wants is the attention of the response. So ultimately, at first I took it off of them by jumping in, off of Christy and Casey by jumping in. But then I stopped responding too once I got her attacking me instead of Christy. And so then other people, I said, don't respond to her. And they didn't. And so it ended up that she had maybe 2 friends on her Facebook page responding to her, patting her on the back for what she's doing, but she just died and went away because nobody was listening, nobody was giving her ice cream. So the best way to get out of those flame wars is to don't give them ice cream. Now, I don't know where Dinah is. She may have left the state. I mean, she's just been quiet lately, and I hope it stays that way.
Well, we have a saying down here in the South, bless her heart.
I won't agree with that.
Well, I mean, it's, she's doing the best she can, bless her heart. She just, she's totally fucked up.
What she did to Christy during that period where, Kevin was taken back off the street and put in jail, what she did to Christy when Christy was bearing that emotional stress is unforgivable to me.
Absolutely.
Kevin forgives her. Christy forgives her. I don't believe in that. You cannot forgive. I cannot personally forgive people that are so obnoxious as to let's say hit somebody when they're down. And that's exactly what she was doing.
Yeah, Christy was not only down; she was laid. She was out. She was unconscious, and for her to come and stomp on her like that was just totally uncalled for. But anyway, let's not talk about her.
Okay.
Hey, we've got another caller on the line. Let me see if I can bring him on. 714-331. Are you there? 714-331. Or are you just listening? I guess he's just listening. Okay. Well, yeah, his mic's live, so if he decides to chime in, I think that might be Donnie Brock, our Mayor Donnie Brock.
I know Donnie. If we get him talking, we'll kill the rest of the show, won't we?
Yeah.
Come on, Donnie. Say something.
Donnie. Oh, Donnie. He's not going to say anything.
He's a nice guy.
Oh, yeah.
I've talked
I'll tell you
what. A number of times, and he praises Casey for all the work that he's done for the community, and one of my articles got four or five letters from people that Casey has contributed money and goods to these people. He's helped them with things. Casey's a model citizen. When he got out of prison 28 years ago, he decided he was going to turn his life around. And if the prison system is intended to reform people and make them a viable part of society, of all the people I know, and believe me, I know a lot of ex-felons, Casey is probably the epitome of the success of the system turning somebody around and making them go straight by his community activity, his activity on the border. He's just a model citizen in that respect. So, and Donnie sees that, and Donnie was the first one of these outside people that I talked to, and he made it very clear that how proud the community was of Casey Massey.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the government totally picked on the wrong person for this.
Yep, they can't demonize him, can they?
No, huh? And they've tried. Lord, have they tried? The newspapers have tried. TV has tried to demonize him, and none of it sticks, because then they go back and they find out that he was Humanitarian of the Year. They find out that he was Habitat of Humanity's, a big award winner for them in building and doing for them, and every time they tried to sling mud at him, there was nothing to sling. It won't stick. The guy's Teflon. And it's not because he's slick. It's because he's iron to the core. He is iron to the core.
Yeah, look at SPLC. In their first article, they said he had ammonium nitrate and diesel fuel. And then the more recent article that was in Brownsville paper was he had explosives. Now, someday maybe they'll get it right and say he had tannerite legally purchased. But
one of these days.
Kind of stretching for mainstream media to tell the truth.
Oh, hey, I saw it firsthand down there, and it was just horrendous. They would go with their agenda, and the agenda was that these are refugees. These are refugees. No, they're not. They're invaders. It's an invasion. We're being invaded. They're breaking the state of Texas bank and straining our resources past what we can handle. And why are they still coming? Because Obama has promised them amnesty.
And free food and free housing and free money and free health care and free this and free that. Things that our own veterans
Obama
who fought
the
for
whole
this country
9
don't
yards.
get. Yeah.
Right. And, we've got vets that are on the streets right now, and the money that's going to these friggin' illegals should be going to our vets. And that they say, well, Social Security is about to go broke. Dude, pay the money back that you stole from Social Security for something else. Social Security's fine. There's nothing wrong with Social Security. Pay it back what you owe. The billions that you borrowed.
Trillions. It's trillions. Tens of trillions of dollars are owed to Social Security Trust Fund and the Federal Highway Transportation Trust Fund. But they don't count as a part of the debt because the government owes it to itself. The only thing they count as debt, the $16 trillion or $17 trillion, is money that's owed outside of government.
Well,
so
I beg to differ.
They
owe it to
another,
us.
They don't count.
We paid it in. It's our money, and they took it.
They took it, right. But they owe it back, and they're willing to admit they owe it if you force them, but they're not going to pay it back. And so Social Security is going to go broke because the government took the money and does not pay back their IOU. On paper, there's kind of an IOU. We've borrowed, I don't know, is $20 or $30 trillion from Social Security Trust Fund. That's a lot of money. But they owe it to it. But until they put it in, it's not there. So then they talk about how bad Social Security is off. Even worse, for me, because of my political activity, I believe, 3 years ago when I filed the habeas corpus, all of a sudden they took not 15% of the IRS took not 15% of my Social Security check, but they took the whole damn thing. I don't get a penny. I worked 48 years for it, and I don't get a damn penny out of it.
Where's the right in that? Seriously, where's the friggin' right in that?
Well, originally it couldn't be touched, and then they gave IRS the ability to take 15% of it so that you could live. I worked 48 years, and if it wasn't for the nest egg that I have created for myself, I'd be starving on the streets with those veterans. And I'm a veteran, but it's a different war. And then look at veterans. We're losing them on our own streets at a much greater rate than we lose them in combat. We don't lose 22 a day in combat. We lose an average of, I think, in the worst periods, maybe an average of 6 a day. So we're losing 4 times as many a day on a regular basis that we do in the bad periods when there's a lot of active fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq. I mean, it's crazy.
Or anywhere else, for that matter.
Well, the plan for restoration of constitutional government, we've got to take it back. And, when do the Patriots do the Patriot thing? When there's a plan viable? And I think in a couple months, there's going to be a lot of serious discussion about a viable plan, that people are going to go on road trips around the country talking to groups about it. We're putting that together now, and the government, I'm surely knows because they've tapped our phones, that you're going to see that there are going to be a lot of people. We're going to try and get people within areas to come together. Tea Party. Well, militia is separate. You know, there's the fighters and the other people, and the other people is one group, and it will come under the guise of committees of safety, which historically we wouldn't be the United States of America today if it wasn't for the committees of safety back in the late 1700s. They called for the First Continental Congress, the second one. They armed the militia. They fed Boston when the British occupied it. They drove sheep and pigs into Boston. Blankets, firewood, everything to help the people that stayed in Boston stay alive until the British were decided to leave. They set up parallel governments, and if the Tory government failed, in fact, as early as 1774, Worcester, Massachusetts declared independence from the British government. It was qualified until they returned to the original charter for Massachusetts. And from then on, Worcester, Massachusetts, the government that was there was kicked out. They kicked out all the judges, all the Tories that were in the militia were kicked out, and they established a government outside of the royal government. They did it on their own, and that's the whole idea behind Committee of Safety is phenomenal. So that's going to be, in a month or two, is going to start getting pushed out for people to understand. Then there will be another one that's more militia-oriented that's going to talk about subordination to civil authority as well as a few other things. I mean, we're working on getting all this stuff together. But as far as a viable plan, there is one. It's just when you're competing with guys like this conference call yesterday, if you heard about it, oh, the Chinese are going to invade because we owe them all this money. Hell, the Japanese didn't need a reason to invade. They don't. The Chinese don't either.
No.
You know, all these scams that people pull, and they've been going on for 20 or 30 years. And new variations of old failures is what they are. But a workable plan is what a number of people are working on to bring together so that there is something that is workable, and it'll be in everybody's hands. Start going into everybody's hands in this pretty soon, yes.
Well, we've got another caller that came on, 214-934.
Hello, brother.
Hey, who's this?
Donnie Brock.
Donnie Brock, what you doing?
Oh, I just got in. I told you I'd be a little bit late, but I didn't want to miss no more than I had to.
Hey, we got 22 minutes, plenty of time, bro.
No.
How you doing, Donnie? This is Gary.
How are you? Gary, how you doing, brother?
Just fine.
I was doing some, I know you're not supposed to text and drive, but I was trying to read those motions on my way back. I don't know what to think. The motion was pretty well presented.
Cirillo's, yes, I think so.
I would think that, you know, if the judge decides to or not to, he's got to give an explanation for his findings. I think it would be pretty hard to explain that away.
I do too, especially if you read Corley's response, the 24-page government response. That's the laughing thing.
Is it? I was through the first half a page, and then I got here to the house and ran inside. But I thought if I was if she was on the other foot for me, I don't know how I would respond to it. It would just be gibberish, I'm sure.
It's pretty much what it was.
But, you know, my article takes the key points out of the 24 pages. In fact, if you know, in my article, it actually tells the page where each of these quotes occurs on. So instead of reading the entire 24 pages, if you read the article, you can go and, you know, to that particular page in the government's response and see it. But, I mean, to me, it was...
Don't be
drink
drinking
milk when you read it, because you're going to spray milk all over the place when you start laughing.
Yeah, don't be doing tequila shots. I guarantee you'll laugh your ass off. Then how you going to drive? You're going to have a seatbelt on you. Fall out.
You do it drinking tequila, you end up with tequila in your nostrils.
Yeah.
Oh.
But it's friggin' hilarious. They're trying to equate KC with a bank.
Really?
And with an adversarial court decision that was already LLC versus Nike, and another one, Daimler Chrysler against somebody named Cuomo. Those are civil actions, and they're not facing prison time for a civil action. It's who's writing the contract. So he's using those to show the lack of the authority of the court to rule on things when this is a criminal action. And they're really suggesting that KC has no right to defend himself.
It says that KC has no standing to tell them to question the law that he's being arrested under. Well, if he doesn't have standing, who the frig does? He's the one that's got his life in jeopardy.
If he doesn't have standing to defend himself, then I'm assuming he's not on trial anymore.
Right. Yeah. No, he must be at home.
Well, he's in jail, but they don't want him to have any opportunity to defend himself and get out of jail. And that's why, there are two quotes in there that I've got, Donnie. One is "The king can do no wrong," which is the title of my article, because they're acting like they're the king and they can do no wrong. Except he shows that Congress, who's more important than the damn AUSA, was just stupid enough for 80 years to not see how they could make all felons guilty of possession of a firearm using the general welfare provision. You're going to have to read it to see. But,
I haven't been down.
The other quote, Donnie, the other quote is, you may remember this. W.C. Fields once said, what is it? Damn, I can't.
If you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with bullshit.
Baffle them with bullshit. Yeah, that's right. It. If you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with bullshit, and that government's response is not dazzling anybody.
It ain't got no brilliance to it, baby. It ain't nothing but bullshit. As a matter of fact, I'd suggest you get the waist waders out before you start reading it, because it is deep.
Well, I'd read about 3 paragraphs of it before I got to the house. I haven't been to Outpost of Freedom today either, so I'm still in the dark.
Well, it went out.
I guess I'm not as in the dark as some people are, though.
No, not a bit.
It went out on the 13th, 2 days ago, so check your email, and if you don't have it, you send me an email and I'll send you a copy of it.
I usually get them. Like I say, I usually go fiddle through your website just in case I've missed anything. I like to read some of the older stuff periodically.
So what have you been up to, Donnie?
Well, I've got a couple of jobs pending, just a whole lot of work.
Well, that's a good thing.
I got my honeydew
that'll keep you out of trouble.
I got my honeydew list here at the house done. I just think I was a couple of weeks late with it. We kind of lived in a construction zone there for a bit. But it's all, like I say, it's all coming back together. I've got to start getting ready to do something for next May. I don't know what I'm going to do. I would love to unseat the nice lady that spent her quality time during the election going everybody I robbed the police station on a regular basis. I would really love to give her some spare time for her hands. I'm just kind of sidestepping the crazy thing.
Is that a city council position, or is that?
It's a council position. This is the first one that's open. I can always change later on.
Cool.
There's nothing holding me to finishing that seat. And unlike the characters we had last month, they'll probably go after me to resign my first seat before I apply for the second one, which I just never got to the Secretary of the State early enough. So they just basically held their own seats and boycotted everything while they were changing positions. I so hate dumb people. They stress me the hell out, brother. especially when they're 30, 40 years older than you are. I'd expect somebody on the council that's been there for 18 years to be just, I won't say explicitly prepared for anything that could come up, but I'd say she ought to know what the hell she's talking about when her mouth opens and words come out. So how has Captain Rogers been doing down there?
How's what?
How's Captain Rogers doing down there with his situation? How's Will doing?
You talking to James or me?
James, is he still there?
I don't know.
He bailed on us. He gave us some time to run his radio show.
We left the silence for him. He didn't fill it in.
He's probably making a sandwich as fast as he can. How's your part of the world, Gary?
Oh, pretty good. You know, I'm waiting for I wrote one about Kim Davis. I don't know if you read that, but you know, the problem to me is in the legislative body that enacts laws, and she took an oath to obey the laws. Now, are the laws made by the legislative body or by the judges? I'm confused on that one. But sure. She has one federal statute, her state constitution, and state statutes that tell her that she cannot issue a marriage license to anybody, a male and a female. And then she's got a judge that says this is the law. And then she's got a governor that said this is the law, but the governor can only sign an enactment by the legislature. And so really the Congress of the United States has abrogated their responsibility in addressing the marriage provision in the U.S. Code, and the state of Kentucky has abrogated their the Assembly of Kentucky has abrogated their responsibility because they have not called an emergency session to change both the Constitution and the statute. And so, you know, what we've got is Kim Davis is the private. The general screwed up, but the private's going to suffer for it.
Right. Well, that's ours. You know, of course, all the pictures I've seen of her, she's pretty bitter. And
I don't blame her.
And
you know, the funny thing is, when they finally let her out, she got exactly what she asked for. She doesn't want her name on the licenses. She is not going to authorize it, and they've agreed to that. So they agreed to what she asked for before they put her in jail. Does that show that they were wrong in putting her in jail?
Well, it's not something any one person is going to own up to, I'm sure.
Well, hell no. Not the federal government, but the lowest level judge in the system
sure
has the authority to put her in jail and then agree to everything that she'd asked for, just about.
How does that make any sense?
That's abuse of power. It's just being punitive for the sake of the vindictiveness.
Yeah, that was a confusing situation for me. If it's going nationwide, and it's been agreed upon, it's been enacted, the changes have been made, the appropriate deals have been made, at that juncture, there's nothing more to fight for. I'm telling you, her balls are bigger than mine. She went up against all of them, and she made it through the indoor and through the outdoor. She's still giving them the finger. You got to love it.
Well, you know, think back to when the Supreme Court overturned the state death penalty laws and set conditions that had to be applied. The state legislatures immediately began working up new legislation to accommodate the decision of the Supreme Court. But in this case, the legislatures are sitting on their ass collecting re-election campaign funds from corporations and ignoring their responsibility to legislate within Kentucky or within Congress. I mean, you know, that the country's gone to hell. We just got to get it back. That's where we got to go.
There's nothing wrong with the bus, but somebody needs to keep an eye on that fucking driver.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully these elections are going to bring us a better driver.
Well, there's only one driver acceptable to me, and he's the guy that doesn't believe in political correctness, because that's the most damaging aspect, because it makes things warm and fuzzy instead of practical. And if he can make a profit in his business, I'm sure he can find the way of turning this country around and making it the real debt. We were talking about debt before. The real debt, I've got two articles that place the debt at over $100 trillion. But that's the money that's owed from pocket to pocket, not outside of government. Over $100 trillion, not 16 or $17 trillion. If they paid back all the IOUs internally, Federal Highway Transportation Trust Fund, Social Security Trust Fund, and others, it's over $100 trillion that they've got to put back in the proper pockets.
I don't think they didn't plan that far ahead. It's just like what was being done here. We have nearly 200%. We have 2 full years worth of reserve money. You sit the council down and tell them we're a 403C. We're not supposed to have $3 million in backup funds when we got streets that suck. We got places that are not well lit and they're just not safe. It's just too dark here. That money can go. Oh, we were going to wait till the state would pay for that. You can't do that. The state comptroller will come to your bank. Eventually, they'll get down to towns as small as us. They'll come knock on the door and take all your shit away and let you start over because you're so good at saving, you have no trouble doing that again at all. That's the mentality. And, it's just the opposite at the federal level. Fuck, I can't stay here no more, guys. Let's do whatever the hell we want. I see it. I read it. I watch his mouth when he talks. Holy God, our president's... I don't believe most of the conspiracy theories I have about him, but let me tell you what. He's a shady son of a bitch. No doubt about it. He lies. If you can't watch him for 2 minutes speaking about anything and realize this sucker here's a lot more polished than I gave him credit for 8 years ago, 4 years ago. I thought he was just kind of a middle road idiot. He's no idiot. But that's
I think he's got an agenda.
But it's getting hard for him to pull agenda items off now. Now everybody watches everything he does, but I assure you, Gary, he does. And he's working with 50 of the top scholars in the world trying to figure out how to dupe them over on us rapidly as he needs to make sure everything's in place before he's ousted. But I gave him the buffoon mark forever. But I gave him the buffoon mark, but I was wrong. I'll take it back.
Well, I'm going to be writing an article based on some prison talk where William Wolf is up in jail on federal charges, bogus charges again by the federal government. But I just got a letter from him today about some prison talk that's going on up there. And if it's representative of the truth, it's rather appalling. But it's got to wait for the article. Should come out this week sometime.
Okay, be up my subscription.
What?
Is it going to be? I'll get my subscription. It'll come sent to me like everything else does.
Yeah, they all go out in the email. They go on the blog, and the links get posted on Facebook.
Day after tomorrow, you say?
I'm not sure when. I've been so busy with this one, and I got some chores. I've got 5.5 acres here, and I'm kind of letting some of it get down a little bit, and I've got to do some work. So I just go out, and what I do is I go out and work between articles until I kind of get my head clear. But I got the letter today, and I've got to do an article on the subject. It'll be coming out soon.
Okay. I'll get it as soon as it does. Boy, I'm getting mad just thinking about it.
Well, me too, and, time's getting short, but just like Casey and I talk about all the time, divine providence, pieces are going to fall into place when they're supposed to fall into place.
I never thought we'd have somebody like Trump. I mean, I never knew that Donald Trump would turn out to be the way that he has been. I mean, what a shot in the arm that is. The guy's
Yeah,
saying stuff that needs to be said.
Honesty in politics. You know, there have been a few times in our history, and one of them, surprisingly, was when Abraham Lincoln got elected by changing the entire nature of a political party. And what Trump is doing right now is basically destroying the Republican Party as it exists. The powers, the people behind it that dictate everything and get people to go along with it are losing their ass. And,
they don't get to talking for it.
So the people are going to decide the platform for the Republican Party this time, not those hidden people behind the scenes. And so
yeah, the shadow
major shift.
Yeah, the shadow is getting a little light thrown on it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's whenever he came out and said, build the wall and everything else on the border, that really struck a chord with me in that, and apparently it did with the rest of the U.S. too.
Sending it back, all these things, yes, everything is what we need to hear and what we need to do as a country to protect, to save our country.
Absolutely. Bringing industry back to America and getting and if they want to build something in Mexico and bring it back, put a tariff on it that makes it to where it's cheaper for them to build it here. And, absolutely, dude, get after it.
Well, my last truck was a Dodge made in Mexico. My current one's a Toyota made in Austin.
Well, you boys know what's at the south end. You boys both know what's at the south end of Mexico that goes from water to water, don't you?
Say that again.
You both know what exists in Florida. I mean, in Mexico, with their far southern border. It extends from Gulf of Mexico to Pacific Ocean, don't you? An 18-foot high voltage fence with 2 sets of gate doors that let the trains through twice a day.
Right, but they're upset because we won't let their people just flow across our border.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like they would let Guatemalans and the Panamanians and everybody else down there, the Costa Ricans, they don't want them there.
No, and they're only allowing them to come through their country if they're going all the way up to Unidos Estados.
Right.
Well, and did you hear about all the Muslims that Mexico is going to take in now?
Yeah,
they ain't going to stay in Mexico. They're going to be hauling ass for the U.S.
And Canada's going to be
taking
that
border shut down.
Canada's going to be taking some too, so they're going to be coming from both
Canada
ends.
said no, hell no. Canada ain't taking none.
Canada said no, thank you. Yep.
Canada just said no. That's too much of a risk for us, eh? Take off, you hosers.
Well, they've got some up there now because that one city said no to the mosque up there about a month ago.
Absolutely.
So they've got some up there now, so they're just there. And the worst thing is they can come down here and then get the rifles, so the invasion, we supply the rifles to them after they've invaded our country, and that way that it's immigration, not invasion.
I'll tell you, man. And did you see where they look at Germany? Right now, Oktoberfest is coming up, and do you believe that these assholes had the unmitigated gall to tell them that you can't have Oktoberfest because it's offensive to us?
Yeah, and I was in Germany during Oktoberfest a couple times in Munich, and that goes back 800 years.
Yeah, they're wanting, no, you can't do that, man. We're Muslims, we're here, and that's offensive to us. And Munich's got to be overrun with our kind anyway. And Munich gets 60 million people through Oktoberfest. Munich's going to say, fudge you, dude. You're going back to Syria. They need to send them all right back to Syria where they came from, or Somalia, or wherever it is.
The Scandinavian countries have begun to turn back, and they haven't gotten to the extent of destroying the mosques yet, but I think they will pretty soon. But Germany took a pretty big step when they closed the border to from Hungary to a passport checkpoint, and they've got then 4,000 troops standing by to enforce it, and that was just this last week. And so
they're going to need the troops because there's something like 80,000 of them SOBs already there, and another 300,000 on the way.
Yeah, I don't know how well armed they are in Germany, but the troops are armed and disciplined, so I think the 4,000 troops could probably deal with the problem.
Without a doubt.
We should fly them all back to Syria. I'm not so sure we should land, get them off the plane that way.
Oh, no. Who said anything about landing? No. There ain't no landing. Ain't no parachute either.
Pull down about 60 feet. Tip them out of there 2 at a time.
Well, I'd like to see more boats develop leaks on the way across the Mediterranean, personally. But, that's the risk they take, and I've got no sympathy if they don't make it.
Right.
Well, fellas, the time has come. We've filled our 2 hours. I appreciate you guys so much. I'm going to go ahead and end the episode. Gary, I appreciate you. Donnie, I'm glad you got here, brother. Better late than ever. Sir. It's good to hear from you all the time.
2 weeks from today, remember that. That's the day that get your prayers in, just so in case Hannon's listening.
Absolutely. Judge. Well, I'm telling you, he, like you said, he's a very intelligent man. And he's going to understand that, and he's going to look at that, and I mean, if I get snarky about it, he's going to laugh his ass off.
I hope he does.
I'm telling you, man. It's just total horseshit. Like you said, he tried to baffle him with bullshit, but they ain't going to baffle that man.
Excuse me. Well, he opened the door, and that's indicative of an open mind. He did not have to allow Cirillo to submit that motion again.
Absolutely.
So Absolutely.
We'll God bless him, man. I'm so glad he did, because from just the conversation that you've had with Casey afterwards, that was a world of change for that man's heart.
Yep. So we'll see what comes of it.
2 weeks from today, tune in. Be there. Be square. This is James. This is Rage Against the Regime. We'll see you next week. Later, guys.
Later.